You are about to face the hardest moment of your life. Maybe you already are. And the strange truth is, every answer you need was written down over 2,000 years ago. Not by a therapist, not by a self-help guru, by a Roman emperor, a freed slave, and a man who knew he was dying. What they discovered changed the world, and in the next 30 minutes, it will change you. Welcome back to Wisdom of the Stoics, the channel dedicated to one mission, taking the ancient wisdom of the greatest Stoic philosophers who ever lived, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, and translating it into something you can use today, not as a philosophy lecture, not as abstract theory, but as a practical system for living with power, clarity, and unshakable calm, no matter what life throws at you. If you're new here, welcome. You found this channel for a reason, and if you've been with us a while, you already know what's coming, something that is going to cut deep. So make sure you stay until the end, because the seventh pillar, the one most people never reach, is the one that ties everything together. And it may be the most important thing you hear all year. Let's begin. Here's something no one wants to admit. Most people, most intelligent, capable, well-meaning people, spend their entire lives running from discomfort, running from failure, running from silence. And here's the cruel irony. The faster they run, the worse things get. Anxiety goes up, relationships fall apart, the job feels meaningless, sleep becomes a battlefield. And that quiet voice in the back of the mind, the one that says something is wrong with the way I'm living, gets louder every year. Sound familiar? This isn't a character flaw. This isn't weakness. This is what happens when nobody teaches you how to think. Because here's what the Stoics understood, and what modern psychology is only just catching up to. Almost every problem in your life is not caused by your circumstances. It's caused by how you interpret your circumstances. Read that again. Not what happens to you, but what you believe about what happens to you. The Stoics had a word for this. They called it hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, the part of you that decides what things mean. And they spent their entire lives building a system, a set of mental pillars that would make that ruling faculty bulletproof. These weren't weekend seminars. These weren't motivational posters. They were battle-tested, war-forged principles written by a man who ruled the known world while his children were dying around him, while wars raged on the borders of his empire, while plague swept through Rome. Marcus Aurelius didn't write Meditations for publication. He wrote it for himself to survive. And that's exactly what these 7 pillars are. Not inspiration, not motivation, survival tools for the human mind. So let's walk through them, one by one. Pillar 1, the most foundational principle in all of Stoic philosophy. And if you get only this one right, your life will change. Epictetus, a man who was born a slave, who was physically tortured by his master, who had literally nothing, said this: "Some things are in our control, and others are not." That's it. 6 words that most people spend their entire lives failing to understand. Think about the last time you were truly miserable. I mean genuinely suffering, not just mildly inconvenienced. What was it about? Was it something someone said about you? Something you couldn't change? An outcome that was already decided? Or was it your reaction to those things? Here is what Epictetus identified as the only things truly in your control: your thoughts, your desires, your judgments, your actions. That's it. Everything else, other people's opinions, the economy, your health, The weather, whether someone loves you back, is not in your control. Now here's where people misunderstand Stoicism. They hear this and think, so I should just stop caring about outcomes. No, that's not it at all. You should care deeply about outcomes. You should work hard for what you want, but you should anchor your sense of peace, your inner state, only to what you do, not to what results. The Stoics called this preferred indifference. You prefer to be healthy, but you don't need it to be okay. You prefer to be wealthy, but you don't need it to be whole. You prefer to be loved, but you don't need another person's love to maintain your dignity. Let me make this concrete. You've been passed over for a promotion. You've given it everything. You worked longer, harder, smarter than anyone in that building, and they chose someone else. Now your mind has two choices. Choice one, this means I'm not good enough. This means I'm a failure. This means I wasted years of my life. This means I'll never get ahead. Or choice two, I did everything within my control. The decision was not mine to make. I will evaluate what I can do differently, and I will move forward with my integrity intact. Same situation, completely different human experience. The Stoics called the first path passion, uncontrolled, emotional reaction. They called the second path eudaimonia, human flourishing. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Here's your question. For pillar one, what problem are you suffering over right now that is actually outside your circle of control? Because the moment you truly answer that, you can either do something about it, or you can release it. There is no third option. Pillar two might be the most uncomfortable thing I say to you today. But stay with me, because this discomfort is actually a gift. Memento mori. Latin, 2 words. Remember that you will die. Now before you click away, hear this. The Stoics weren't morbid. They weren't nihilists. They weren't telling you life is meaningless. They were doing the exact opposite. They were saying, because life is short, because this moment, this conversation, this breath is genuinely finite, it means something. It matters. You don't have unlimited time to waste on petty grudges, hollow ambitions, or relationships you keep putting off. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, how many a Fabius, a Lucilius, a Lepidus have there been? With what eagerness were they pursuing everything? And soon all was forgotten, and they themselves became just ashes. He wasn't being dark, he was being awake. Here is what Memento mori actually does to you, psychologically, when you truly internalize it. The petty stuff stops mattering. That argument with your colleague, when you hold up the lens of mortality, when you ask, will this matter in 5 years? Will I even remember this person's name on my deathbed? The answer, almost always, releases the grip. But the important stuff becomes urgent. That conversation you've been avoiding with your father, that creative project you keep saying, someday, that version of yourself you keep promising to become. Memento mori makes someday feel dishonest, because someday might be a lie. Seneca, who knew he was dying, who wrote some of the most luminous philosophy in human history in his final years, said this, let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. Balance life's books each day. Not at the end of the year, not at the end of your life. Today, I want to ask you something deeply personal, and I want you to actually think about it, not skim past it. If you found out today that you had 1 year left to live, what would you stop doing? What would you start doing? Who would you call? What would you finally say out loud? That gap between the life you'd live if you knew you were dying and the life you're actually living right now, that gap is where the Stoics say your work is. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect. Now, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. Seneca, the Roman general who rode in triumph through the streets of Rome, at the height of his power, cheering crowds on both sides, always had a slave riding behind him in the chariot, and that slave had one job, to whisper over and over, Memento mori, remember that you will die, not to destroy the joy of the moment, but to make the moment real. Pillar 3 is where Stoicism stops being merely philosophical and becomes almost superhuman. Amor fati, love your fate, not just accept what happens to you, not just tolerate it, love it. Now I know what you're thinking. That's easy to say when things are going well. But what about when they're not? And that is exactly the point. Marcus Aurelius lost 4 of his 5 children. He watched plague kill thousands of Roman citizens. He fought wars he didn't want to fight on the borders of an empire he didn't ask to inherit. And yet, in his private journal, the one he never intended anyone to read, he wrote, not with bitterness, but with a kind of fierce, disciplined gratitude. He wrote, accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, and do so with all your heart. Amor fati is not passive resignation. It is an aggressive, active embrace of reality as it is, combined with the iron will to make something from it. Friedrich Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by the Stoics, said Amor fati was his formula for greatness. He wrote, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. Let me give you a modern translation. You lose your job. Amor fati says, this is the exact material I have been given. What will I build from it? Your relationship ends. Amor fati says, this pain is real, and I will not pretend otherwise, but I will not let it hollow me. I will let it shape me. You get a diagnosis. Amor fati says, this body, this moment, this life, exactly as it is mine, and I will meet it fully. There is a famous story about the Stoic philosopher Epictetus. His master, a cruel man, one day began twisting Epictetus's leg, trying to break him. Epictetus said calmly, you will break it. The master kept twisting. Epictetus said, there, you have broken it. And his response? He said simply, did I not tell you that you would break it? No rage, no despair, just acknowledgement, just presence. That is amor fati in the most brutal possible context. You may not be able to love your fate in the moment it arrives. That is human. That is honest. But the Stoic practice is this. When the storm hits, ask not, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this happening for me to discover? The obstacle becomes the path. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. We're halfway through, and I want to pause for just a moment Because if you've been paying attention, you may have noticed something. These first three pillars are not separate ideas. They are a single architecture. Pillar 1 tells you where to focus your energy. Pillar 2 tells you why urgency matters. Pillar 3 tells you how to respond when the world doesn't cooperate. Together, they form the Stoic foundation. The next 4 pillars are where this foundation gets built on. And if you think the first 3 were powerful, stay with me, because pillar 4 is the one that most people in your life have never encountered. And it may explain every relationship problem you've ever had. If you're getting value from this, and I believe you are, hit that like button right now. It tells us you want more content like this, and drop a comment below. Which of the first 3 pillars hit you the hardest? Now, pillar 4, modern culture, is obsessed with positive thinking. Visualize success. Manifest your dreams. Believe and receive. And I'm not going to tell you that's entirely wrong, but I am going to tell you that the Stoics identified something those approaches miss entirely. They called it Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. In plain language, deliberately imagining everything that could go wrong before it does. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing." And in a separate letter, "He is never unprepared who has thought about what might happen before it happens." This is not pessimism. This is not catastrophizing. This is strategic mental preparation. Here's the psychology behind it. When something bad happens that we haven't anticipated, the shock alone multiplies the suffering. We're not just dealing with the problem. We're dealing with the problem plus the disorientation of being blindsided. But when we have already visited that possibility in our minds, when we have already asked, what if I lose this? What if this fails? What if this person leaves? The actual event loses much of its power to destroy us. We've already been there. We know the terrain. Seneca wrote about loss this way: "Fortune gives us nothing which we can really own. Nothing is ours except time." And he would spend time each morning imagining the things he valued most: his home, his health, his relationships, being taken away, not to make himself miserable, but so that when he arrived at dinner with his family that evening, he knew it was not guaranteed. He knew it was precious. He was present for it in a way that most people never manage. Premeditatio malorum makes the good things more vivid, not less. It also makes you functionally better at handling adversity. The Stoics called it apatheia, not apathy, in the modern sense, but the absence of destructive passion, the ability to respond rather than react. Try this tonight. Before you go to sleep, spend 5 minutes imagining the things you most fear losing: your health, your job, your loved ones. Don't spiral. Don't catastrophize. Just sit with it. Let it be real. Ask, if this happened, what would I do? Who would I be? You may find something surprising waiting there. Not fear, gratitude. Pillar 5, virtue as the only true good. Here's where Stoicism makes its most radical claim. Not radical in a dramatic way. Radical in the quiet, world-rearranging way. The Stoics said, there is only one thing that is truly good. Not money, not success, not health, not pleasure, not even love. Virtue. Specifically, the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, temperance. Now, before you tune out, because this can sound abstract, let me make it very, very concrete. The Stoics were not saying, these other things don't matter or aren't worth pursuing. They were saying, the only thing that determines the quality of your inner life, your sense of self, your peace, your dignity, is the quality of your character. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, wrote this to himself. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That's it. That's the whole system. He had access to unlimited wealth. He could have done anything. And his private guiding principle was, is this right? Is this true? Here's why this pillar is so powerful as a problem-solving tool. Most of the anguish we experience, the existential dread, the chronic anxiety, the hollow feeling, comes from a misalignment between our actions and our values. We lie to keep the peace. We compromise our integrity to keep the job. We stay silent when we should speak. We speak when we should stay silent. We take the easy path when we know it's wrong. And every time we do that, there is a cost, not always visible, not always immediate. But the Stoics believed the cost was always there, accumulated. In the soul, Epictetus said, the key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. And Marcus wrote, never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. Lose your self-respect. That's the thing the modern world rarely names. We talk about mental health. We talk about burnout. We talk about anxiety. But we rarely talk about the soul-level corrosion that happens when we stop living in alignment with what we actually believe is right. The Stoics saw virtue not as a restriction, but as the only true source of inner freedom. Because if your peace depends on money, it's fragile. If your peace depends on other people's approval, it's fragile. But if your peace depends on whether you acted with wisdom and integrity today, that is entirely in your control, and nothing can take it from you. Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Pillar 6. The practice of attention. Living in the present. Pillar 6 is perhaps the most personal because it speaks to a particular kind of suffering that is entirely self-inflicted and entirely curable. The Stoics called it the tyranny of the mind that won't stay home. Marcus Aurelius wrote, confine yourself to the present. 3 words. Deceptively simple, psychologically almost impossible without practice. Because here is the brutal truth about the human mind. We almost never live in the present. We live in the past, replaying what went wrong, what we should have said, what we lost, who hurt us. Or we live in the future, rehearsing catastrophes that haven't happened, anxious about outcomes we can't control, building elaborate scenarios of failure. And the present, this moment, the only moment in which life is actually happening, passes without us in it. Marcus understood this. He watched his own mind wander constantly. That's why Meditations reads the way it does, as a series of reminders, as someone talking himself back to the present over and over. He wrote, limit yourself to the present moment, not because the past doesn't matter, not because the future doesn't exist, but because the past is fixed, and the future is not yet here. And obsession with either steals the only place where change is actually possible. Now, the Stoics developed specific practices to cultivate this. The evening review, sitting at the end of each day and asking, where did I lose presence? Where did I let my mind drag me away? From what mattered? What did I miss? Morning preparation, starting each day, not by checking a phone, but by setting an intention, asking, what am I going to face today and how will I face it? And moment-to-moment practice, which sounds like this. In Marcus's own words, you have power over your mind, not outside events. The training is this. When the anxious spiral starts, notice it, name it, and ask, is this past or future? Neither of which I can change right now. Then return, here, this, now, not because presence is comfortable, but because it is the only address where your real life is being delivered. Pillar 7, the one I told you about at the beginning, the one that ties everything together, and the one that most people never reach, because it requires everything that came before it to land properly. The Stoics were not hermits. They were not mountain monks seeking personal enlightenment in isolated silence. They were politicians, generals, emperors, slaves, teachers. They were people deeply embedded in the world. And they believed that the entire point of wisdom was to make you more useful to other people. Marcus Aurelius wrote, and I want you to hear this carefully, what injures the hive injures the bee. He believed, genuinely, not as a platitude, that human beings are designed for cooperation, for community, for service. He wrote, we are born for cooperation, as are the feet, as are the hands, as are the eyelids, as are the upper and the lower rows of teeth. To act against one another is contrary to nature, and later, never value anything as profitable to yourself, which will compel you to break your promise, to lose your self-respect, to hate any person, to suspect, to curse, to act the hypocrite, to desire anything which needs walls and curtains. Here is what Pillar 7 does for you, practically. It solves what modern psychology now identifies as one of the root causes of depression, anxiety, and existential emptiness. Excessive self-focus, not selfishness in the moral sense, but the mental trap of living inside your own head so completely that the world shrinks down to your own problems, your own fears, your own story. The Stoics discovered what neuroscience would later confirm: when you act in service of something larger than yourself, when you help someone, contribute to your community, care genuinely for another person's well-being, something fundamental shifts. The suffering that felt permanent begins to loosen, not because the problems disappeared, but because your perspective expanded. Seneca wrote, seek not that the things which happen to you should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life. But he also wrote, and this is critical, it is not enough to wish the good. We must also do the good. This is the daily work. Daily work, not occasional, grand gestures. Daily, ordinary, consistent acts of usefulness. Here is your question. For Pillar 7, who in your life needs something you can give right now? Not money, not solutions. Maybe just presence. Maybe just honesty. Maybe just the willingness to show up. Because the Stoics believed that the highest expression of all the other 6 pillars of control, of mortality, of fate, of preparation, of virtue, of presence, was this: using what you've built in service of someone else. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. Marcus Aurelius, let me bring you back to where we started. You are facing something hard. Maybe you know exactly what it is. Maybe it's been hovering at the edge of your awareness this entire time. And what I want to leave you with, the thing the Stoics left us, is this. Pillar 1, you don't control everything, but you always control your response. Pillar 2, your time is finite, which means it matters, which means you matter. Use it. Pillar 3, whatever fate hands you, it is the material you have been given. Build something worthy from it. Pillar 4, prepare your mind for difficulty, not to attract it, but so that it cannot break you when it arrives. Pillar 5, the only thing that truly belongs to you is your character. Protect it above all else. Pillar 6, the only place you can actually live is now. Return to it again and again and again. Pillar 7, use everything you are becoming to serve something larger than yourself. This is the system, not a weekend philosophy, not a quote to screenshot, a daily practice, a way of moving through a difficult world without being destroyed by it. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, father, general, human being, ended meditations, not with triumph. He ended it with a reminder to himself to keep going, to keep trying, to be better today than he was yesterday. And that is all any of us can do. You have endured 1,000 obstacles, but not one of them required more than what you already possess. If something in this video hit you, I want to know which pillar. Drop it in the comments below. Tell me what you're going through. Tell me which one you needed to hear, because this channel exists for you. And every comment you leave tells me what to create next. If this is the kind of content you want more of, make sure you're subscribed. We put out new Stoic philosophy every week, not to entertain you, to help you build something unbreakable inside yourself. And before you close this video, one last thing. Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations alone, in private, for himself. But 2,000 years later, here you are, reading it, which means your private work, the way you choose to meet this day, this difficulty, this moment, matters beyond what you can see. Keep going. We'll see you in the next one. This is Wisdom of the Stoics.